Hello, good morning, and welcome everybody. Peg, just a quick check. Is this sounding loud and clear?
You're loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, let's hope I'm clear in mind as well. So, yes, here we are already on the second morning of this shared sitting together, this journey into the Dharma, journey, shall we say, into the reality of our lives, of our existence, of our being. This such a beautiful talk yesterday by Valerie. I just want to pick up on a couple of things. This fathom long body contains all the teachings of the Dharma. So where do we look for the Dharma? That includes the notorious matter of awakening, right in this very body. What a beautiful reminder. Secondly, this Dharma is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful at the end. What a great teaching. I want to, they sort of go together so beautifully, but one point that I want to just touch on right now, but hope to get into a little bit more, is that, you know, beautiful in the beginning. Now, the beginning of the path is the Four Noble Truths, and the first of the Four Noble Truths, suffering exists. There is suffering. Beautiful in the beginning. Suffering exists. I mean, suffering is sort of, we might think, the antithesis in some ways of beauty. It's when we're cut off from truth, goodness, beauty. So how can the first noble truth, the acknowledgement that there is suffering, be beautiful? Beautiful in the beginning. This path is beautiful in the beginning. And the beginning is, there is suffering. We really don't have to look very far to find the truth of that. So those are sort of a couple of points that will be sort of in the background and the foreground of this talk. The main overt, explicit sort of subject of this talk is another koan from the Gateless Gate, the sixth koan from the Gateless Gate. And it's a koan about, all the above, but also what's known as transmission in Zen. And transmission is an extremely sort of deceptive sort of notion, concept, really. And so we'll be looking at what that is all about in the context of this koan. But before I go into it, where I actually want to start is with thanks to all of you for coming. I know you haven't gone very far from the kitchen to the room where your computer is or something, but still gathering like this by whatever means, it really doesn't matter at all. You know, the Zendo without walls, the Zendo without borders, without boundaries. This is our, to make time in your lives. Find there is time if you just decide there is, sort of thing, and things will come into alignment, to do this practice and to do it in this shared way and to do it in this deep way. It's just, I feel a great deal of gratitude to all of you for agreeing, deciding to do this, because this is how this Dharma is maintained, is by us doing it. It's not a set of concepts. It's an action. It's an activity, many activities, and we do them in order to sort of gradually find more and more in some sense, the Dharma is actually doing them. But we have to do that for that to become clearer. And we do it by gathering, especially by gathering in gatherings like this. So thank you very much to each and every one of you. Okay. Okay. I'm a little hesitant to do this, but I want to start this talk by talking about the game of cricket, which is a rather popular pastime in my homeland of Britain, as well as in countries around the world that were part of the British Empire, now part of the so-called Commonwealth. That's to say India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. Not Canada, oddly. I suppose they got baseball. Cricket is kind of in a way like the British equivalent to baseball, and there's some sort of a bat. It's a little different, and there's a ball that's coming from a bowler, which is sort of like a pitcher. It's sometimes thought to be the most boring game in the world, as well as the most complicated. And sort of, there are stories of non-Commonwealth folks sort of being taken to a cricket match and being just utterly bewildered. And actually, they're quite wrong. It's the best game in the world. It's the simplest, clearest, best game in the world, most enthralling game in the world. Truly it is. But there may be a little bit of a high bar to get into it. But without going into too much detail, one point that I want to sort of convey to you is it's a good little analogy, I hope. There are different kinds of bowlers, or you could say pitchers, in cricket. Some go fast and some swing the ball in the air, and some go slow and spin the ball. And if you're spinning the ball, it's spinning in the air, and when it lands, it bounces in an unexpected way. And basically, you can be an off spinner and a leg spinner. Okay, so hopefully, you won't get too bored just hearing about this. But that just determines when the ball bounces, which way it moves off the bounce. It can move. Leg spin goes this way, off spinner goes that way. So left spin, off spin. But then there are bowlers, very, very skilled spin bowlers, who know how to do something called a googly. Okay. Not Google, googly. This is, been around for probably 130, 150 years or something in the world of cricket. And a googly is, this is getting a little rarefied, I know, but in the world of cricket, we're right in the weeds here. But a googly is a ball delivered by a spin bowler that looks like it's going to be a leg spin, but in fact will be an off spin. Or it looks like it will be an off spin, but in fact is sneakily a leg spin. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So it looks like it's going to spin a certain way, but actually it's going to spin the other way. That's a googly. So very difficult for the batsman, the batter, to handle that. They sort of, it's hard enough to deal with a simple spin, trying to anticipate what it's going to do, and 5 times harder if actually what you're anticipating it's going to do is the opposite of what it's going to do, because the bowler is a googly master. Okay, so what has this got to do with Zen? Well, actually, here's what it's got to do. Zen is full of googlies. It tells you one thing, and actually, lo and behold, it means the opposite. And we had a great example, I thought, of this in the questions that came up yesterday afternoon. One in particular, it sort of struck a chord with me. And I think Valerie actually addressed it very, very beautifully and clearly and wonderfully, and in many sort of dimensions. And I just want to just sort of revisit a little bit that question the way I heard it, and see how it may help us in a certain perspective. It was the way I heard the question was something like this. I thought I understood what this Zen practice is all about. Namely, it's about coming to reside in present moment experience. That's what I thought it was about. Now, forgive me, questioner, if I'm getting this wrong, but this is what I heard. I thought I understood that Zen is about coming home to this moment and learning to sort of be in this moment. But now I'm hearing about this sort of other realms of experience that I'm supposed to have somehow. This horrible, ghastly, terrifying thing called awakening that I lack, that I've got no idea what it is or how I should get there. And isn't that like the opposite of residing in present moment experience? There's this other thing that's supposed to happen that I'm supposed to try to get. And so the whole practice actually isn't a lovely coming home to now. It's an awful challenge. Can you get this other thing? Now, I may be wrong, and that wasn't what the questioner intended. But actually, even if it wasn't, I know that there are people who feel that way about Zen. Because I hear it a lot, and it's just a perfect setup for sort of misery in practice, for loads of performance anxiety, which we just totally don't want, and no matter how deep I may go and how restful and easeful and joyous I may feel, nothing weird has happened. Therefore, my practice is deficient. Okay, so that's what I want to address a bit right now. So that little conundrum is a googly. It's exactly a googly. Because it seems, just sit, get to know your breath, get to know your body experience, whatever. But there's this other thing, awakening, kensho, seeing original nature, that I don't normally see, that I'm supposed to somehow see. Alternatively, okay, I'm going to go all out. I mean, there's a few people who feel this way. I don't care about anything except awakening. I'm going to come in and totally determined. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to sit fast and furious, whatever, and I'm going to get this thing, But then I hear the thing I'm aiming for is already here. And if I aim for it, I'm guaranteed to miss it. See, googly, either way. You think it's a leg spin, it's an off spin. You think it's an off spin, it's a leg spin. I got to get this thing called awakening. No, it's already here. You can't try to get it. Doesn't work. Trying to get it is all wrong. Just like Valerie quoted with the young Joshu or Zhaozhou and his teacher Nansen or Nanchuan. Joshu says, what is the way? Meaning, sort of, how do I find awakening? The way is shorthand for the awakened way. How do I find awakening? Nansen says, he starts, what is awakening? Nansen answers, your ordinary mind is awakening. But I already sort of know my ordinary mind, this ordinary being here as it is, sometimes distracted, sometimes very present. If this is it, then what am I supposed to sort of get if this is it? Obviously, something can happen. I kind of keep hearing about this. Buddhism is founded on it, on a profound shift in the way we experience, isn't it? Doesn't Buddha mean awakened or enlightened or deeply realized or something. So if my ordinary mind is already that, what am I supposed to do? How do I find that if it's already here? And the enigmatic master responds, Nansen, if you turn towards it, if you try to find it, you're going against it. Oh my, oh my, oh my. So I was wrong. It wasn't a leg spin. It was really an off spin. Okay, I understand now. It's an off spin. Oh, no, it's not actually. It's not an off spin. It's a leg spin. Either way, I'm wrong. If I just try to reside in present moment experience, fine, great, great. But actually, there is this other thing. Oh my God. If I try to find that other thing, well, no. It's actually in your very present moment experience. What am I supposed to do? Okay, you see where I'm coming from, this nasty, googly, Zen googly thing. I hope that's clear, that my analogy with the cricket thing. I just going to have to trust that I conveyed that clearly enough. So which is it? Well, we could turn to the famous Tetralemma of Nagarjuna, probably actually it predates Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna was this first century Buddhist master who's in the Zen lineage, who came up with the so-called Tetralemma. It is not, it both is and is not, it neither is nor is not. In other words, it is a leg spin. It is an off spin. It's a leg spin and an off spin. It's neither a leg spin nor an off spin. It is your ordinary mind. It isn't your ordinary mind. It both is and is not your ordinary experience. It neither is nor is not your ordinary experience. Well, that's in colloquial language, that's a mind fuck. Well, it is actually, because the mind as we know it, both is it and is not it. Neither is it, nor is it not it. We're talking about a dimensional shift. A dimensional shift. I mean, maybe a way to frame this is, forget that the fourth dimension is said to be time by the physicists. Put that aside. Let me speak freely and wrongly, but maybe helpfully, I hope. We live in this three-dimensional worldview. And there's a fourth dimension present right now that we don't normally see. That would be the easiest analogy, perhaps, for this, that in the 3D view, we cannot get what this awakening thing is about, because it isn't within the box of 3 dimensions. It's a fourth dimension. It's an expansion in the range of experience. And yes, it's already here right now. And no, it doesn't contradict the 3 dimensions. It's additional. I mean, that's not a perfect analogy, actually, I'm afraid to say, but it's an approach at one, that there's another realm of experience going on for all of us right here now, sort of that includes all our other kinds of experience and is somehow an expansion, not of them, as an additional dimension. And this additional dimension, because it's not one of the 3 normal dimensions we know, it actually cuts through key things like our sense of distance. So I'm here, the wall is over there. I'm here, you guys are over there. This fourth dimension cuts through that. it makes this here and that there, me and you, one, because it cuts through that dimension of distance. Does that make sort of sense? Kind of, in a way. It also doesn't do time. I mean, it can do time freely, but it cuts through time. So in this fourth dimensional view, I know I'm not using it in a sense concordant with physics. Please forgive me and just skip over that. Let's say there is this fourth dimension, and it cuts through time as well. Therefore, what the Buddha experienced is present right now. What all these great masters in our lineage, in the lineage of Zen, of Buddhism, and all the practitioners, and I mean, of course, not just in Zen and not just in Buddhism, but across the whole field of awakened sages, practitioners and ordinary folks who nobody ever heard of, but are deeply awakened, somehow what they experienced and what they do experience is present here right now, no matter when they experienced it or were alive. This is cutting through space and time. That's why it doesn't deny ordinary experience. It doesn't need to. And that's why, well, I'll come to it now. That's why this transmission matter is really weird. Okay, here's the case, the sixth koan in the Gateless Gate. Buddha. It's funny, in Zen it seems to be okay to call Buddha Buddha, but in Theravada it's always the Buddha. The Buddha holds up a flower. Here's the koan. Once in ancient times, when the world-honored one was on Vulture Peak, he held up a flower, twirled it, and showed it to the assemblage. At this, they all remained silent. Only the Venerable Kashyapa broke into a smile. Okay, so just painting the scene a little bit. The Buddha's doing, his sort of teaching on Vulture Peak, where he often did, one of the places. And instead of expounding on the Dharma verbally, he holds up a flower and twirls it and sort of shows it to them. Okay. So this is his teaching, or is he showing them the flower's teaching? What's the teaching? Is it is it amenable to words? Way back in my sort of early days in Zen, I mean, 30 years ago, I remember hearing a master in this monastery I used to go to saying that koans are dark to the mind, but radiant to the heart. Look at this. So, whatever this is, I don't know how clearly you can see it. Sorry, they're kind of springy. I don't think it's my hand, actually. They're just very sort of springy, beautiful lavender stalks. Look at this. I mean, we've heard from both Valerie and myself and innumerable others how the Zen teaching, Zen's beautiful, wondrous speciality in a way, is the teaching of things. Valerie was talking about Tozan, saying that, inanimate things, well, this is not inanimate, are teaching the Dharma. But even this little drop of water from the flower stem on my fingertip, I don't know if you can see it. Even that is teaching the Dharma. It's teaching us. It's teaching. I mean, in a certain way, it's almost wrong to say it's teaching us. I mean, maybe even the word teaching isn't quite right. Showing, being, expressing. You might think, well, flower, okay, I sort of get it. Flowers are so beautiful. They sort of come out of tiniest little seed, and this incredibly beautiful thing appears, and it doesn't last that long, and it dies. And is that sort of teaching? Well, then why do we also have teaching of dog, fox, finger? Well, you could say they're all beautiful and they all decay. Is that the teaching? And then we got the beard. Beard as the great teaching. Beard. And then we've got washing your bowls. We'll come to that as the great teaching. Zen actually, it is a point of departure or expansion or extrapolation or something from much of the other kinds of spiritual teaching in the world, that it's quite happy to say, you want the deepest teaching possibly that I could offer, walk into the kitchen. You want the deepest possible teaching, look at the entrance gate. Listen to the bell. You do not get clearer, deeper teaching than the sound of the bell. Can't get any deeper or clearer. Well, if we just, graft that onto what I was saying a moment ago about this putative fourth dimension or sort of extra dimension. Of course, if you sort of get that, you get that each and every last phenomenon is an expression of that, contains that, shows that. So if you get this, so anything in a sense can sort of reveal it to us, because it is already here. and it can't be found anywhere other than right here and now. But if we try to find it, we cannot but look in the wrong place. So then you might think, okay, I get it. Maybe I am part of it. It includes me. So if I'm looking for it out there, I'm not realizing that I'm already it. Good. That's a helpful step. But then I might think, well, so I've just got to look into me somehow, and then I'll find it. Could be helpful, but there's still sort of a looking, isn't there? There's still sort of somebody investigating. I mean, that's helpful. We need to do that. But there's still some implicit sense of an observer trying to look into these processes that constitute me. And it could be very helpful. I'm not, anything actually sort of could be helpful, and especially practice, definitely. But somehow not 100% quite right, really. The koan goes on. So Buddha holds up the flower, twirls it, and they all remain silent. They just sort of observe this silently. But Kashyapa, who's one of Buddha's leading, closest students, Kashyapa breaks into a smile. So we got the flower, and now we got the smile. Flower, smile. Flower, smile. And when Kashyapa smiles, Buddha then comments like this. The world-honored one said, I have the eye treasury of the true Dharma, the marvelous mind of nirvana, the true form of no form, the subtle gate of the Dharma. It doesn't depend on letters being specially transmitted outside all teachings. Now I entrust Mahakashyapa with this. Now I entrust this to great honored Kashyapa, venerable Kashyapa, great Kashyapa. I entrust it to him. So because of that statement, this is considered the first transmission of the Zen Dharma. Buddha entrusting something to Kashyapa. Now this is sort of where the word transmission gets to be another googly. It sounds like Buddha's sort of handing something on to Kashyapa. And, we have in Zen, there's this thing called Dharma Transmission, actually still to this day, where a teacher, quote unquote, transmits their Dharma to a student. But we got to, so I mean, on one level, there's a kind of institutional, sort of ceremonial, as organizational sort of aspect to that. Because actually Buddha, we take it from this story, was in fact authorizing Kashyapa to be the sort of lead teacher after he had died. And actually there's interesting, there's interesting research on that right now. Some of you might have read Stephen Batchelor's book. I think it's the one, Confession of a Buddhist Atheist, I think, where he goes into some detail about the possible sort of power struggles after the Buddha died, in fact, which kind of Kashyapa emerged victorious, as it were, from. And it could be that there was, I don't think anybody knows for sure, but it could be that it wasn't quite so clear cut as this story suggests. But anyway, leaving that aside, what does Buddha transmit to Kashyapa? Answer: he transmits the I treasury of the true Dharma, the I that can see the reality of things and how wondrous that is, and the marvelous mind of nirvana, the marvelous heart mind of full awakening, full enlightenment, where all has been seen through, all is clear, no longer disturbance and no longer delusion, nothing but wisdom, clarity, love, really, truth and beauty, goodness. The true form of no form, the form that is no form, the no form that is form. Google is everywhere, right? The subtle gate of the Dharma. It's a gate because perhaps there is something to realize, but it's subtle because it's not like other gates that you just go through because it's already here. Is it a gate and not a gate? The gateless gate, the subtle gate. It's Google is everywhere. It doesn't depend on letters. So what I'm transmitting, you can't get it from scripture. I mean, that's a weird one as well, because actually we know in the Zen annals that the sixth ancestor, Wei Nung, got it from hearing a line of scripture. It's because a line of scripture being recited, that's it too. Reading it in a book, that's it too. If we think in terms of this sort of dimensional picture, the fourth dimension thing, it's everywhere, it's everything. It cuts through all the three-dimensional world. So it can't not be a line of scripture, actually. It's just that you got to get it. It's like knowing the scriptures well isn't the same as getting it, seeing it, discovering it. And by the way, see is the wrong word also, because it pervades all sense experience. Being specially transmitted outside all teachings. Sometimes it's called a mind-to-mind transmission, or heart-to-heart, or heart-mind to heart-mind transmission. But what about this word so okay, I get it. It's not just something I can conceptually, cognitively understand. That's not it, because it even applies to concepts, and it even applies to cognitions and thoughts, philosophies. All of that is included in it. It's expressing itself as all of those. It's a step back, out, bigger than all of that. I mean, sort of. Sort of, because one of the other sort of googly aspects of it is that I've been talking about as a sort of extra dimension. But another aspect to it is that it's actually no dimension. So we live in a 3D world. Imagine suddenly seeing through it to a reality of no dimensions. No dimensions at all. A reality where space, which is necessary for 3 dimensions, right, isn't there. It's like sort of a collapsed universe or something. A universe without space. Imagine that. That's another way of looking at it. Not fourth, the zero. How do you say is there an adjective for zero like there is for 4 and fourth, 3 and third, 2 and second, 1 and first, 0 and noughth, the noughth dimension. That's not a very nice word, but that's what we'd have to call it. And I'm saying all this stuff, and some of you are sort of nodding off, I imagine, rightly. I'm thinking, what's all this abstract nonsense Henry's talking about? Oh my God, is this what Zen is really like? Well, no, not at all. First of all, it's one of these difficulties of this conveying that it sounds abstract until you discover it. And then you realize, oh my God, this was never abstract. This is absolutely about my life and my living of this life. And it changes everything in a certain way. Suffering becomes beautiful. It becomes the Dharma. Of course, it means it's no longer suffering, but it also is suffering. I've known people be in complicated situations, challenging situations in life, full of emotional struggle and, real sort of tangles of physical, emotional, psychological distress. And boom, suddenly they discover that all of that was the naughth dimension, the fourth, eighth, 20 millionth dimension. All of it was. So all of it is fully allowed, and all of it is utterly beautiful and is utterly liberated, intrinsically liberated, just as it is. The form of no form, the suffering of no suffering. We could put it that way. The beauty of suffering, the suffering of beauty. I mean, the no form of form. It's so when you get it, it's non. It's not at all abstract. And the after effects are just shock waves through your life of love, of gratitude, of compassion, of reprioritization, and all that. Thoroughly non-abstract. And although lots of training for most of us, follow-up training, much needed for most of us. Okay, I'm about to stop. There's more. I'm going to have to carry on with this with the next talk, I think. But one last point. This flower, when he says, let me see if I can. Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. When the Buddha says, "I have the treasury of the true Dharma," let's just get clear. This is the treasury of the true, the treasury of the true. This is the I treasury, EYE, I treasury of the true Dharma. This is the mind of nirvana. This is the form of no form. This is the subtle gate of the Dharma. This does not depend on letters. This is transmitted outside all teachings. This is me. This is you. This is all.